People sometimes ask me on these channels, or customers of mine, what guitars do you listen? What guitarists do you listen to? What are you into? And I thought about it and thought I'd waffle about it for a few minutes on a video. I tend to like guitar players that when they're playing, they don't sound like anyone else but them, and you know it's them. Now, I just played the opening bit from Mike Oldfield's Omadorn album a second ago, because for me, he's one of those guitar players. He has a style and the way that he picks the string, being that he used to be a bass player, he approaches the guitar differently, and he gets out of the guitar a different tone, whether he's playing acoustic or electric, that no one else really sounds like. And I'm surprised when people name their top 10, top 100 guitar players. He's never on those lists. I don't understand that. But guitar players like that, I'm not a big Queen fan, but when you hear Brian May playing the solos from Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon, when he makes his guitar sound like a brass band, no one sounds like that. Very unique. And a lot of those old guys were unique. You know, your Gilmours, your Blackmores, your Hendrixes. The ones that weren't too obsessed with blues are the ones I gravitate towards. I think blues can be a very restrictive language. I mean, it's built on one scale. So I like guitar players that sort of break that mold a little bit. You know, there's a lot of great guitar players in the 60s and 70s, kind of unknown players like Robbie Basho. You know, some folk players like Bert Jansch, who are very unique, very different, and weren't completely restricted to playing blues patterns all the time. They could play other scales, or they studied other formats of guitar. And I also like people that can take the guitar and make it percussive, you know, so you get sort of a percussive sound out of it. I mean, it's a lot of your fingerstyle guitar players, the greatest of which being probably Michael Hedges and Leo Kutke, were good at that. They knew how to slap and hit the strings in a way that made the the guitar almost like a piano, very percussive. And then you've got your ambient guitar players. I mean, if you listen to the Fripp and Eno albums from the 70s, when Fripp was doing his Frippatronics in a very ambient way, and there are others that sort of emulate that as well. A lot of really tasty ambient style guitarists. I can't remember the name of the person I'm thinking of. Maybe it'll come to me in a minute. But there are a lot of players like that know how to get color and texture out of a guitar. A lot of your ECM jazz guys did that. You know, your Abercrombies and the like, David Torn. Players like that, they just know how to take the guitar and make it a whole palette of sounds. They get an orchestral variance out of their guitar, which I find really interesting. More interesting than the sort of 100-mile-an-hour scale solos that you hear from the top shredders. Although I admire their technique, you know, your Malmsteens, your Eric Johnsons, your Steve Vais, I admire that, but I almost prefer guys that aren't so fast, that come up with a different sonic language for the guitar, whether it's acoustic or electric. Michael Brook is the guy I was thinking of. Michael Brook is the ambient guitar player. He came up with the infinite guitar style, did some albums back in the 90s for 4AD record label. People like him, there's no one that sounds like him. It's very, very different style of guitar playing. Or early Cure albums with Robert Smith, his approach to the guitar. Who else am I thinking of? You know, Johnny Greenwood for Radiohead, or I forget the guy's name. I'm sure you put it in the comments for me. The guy that plays guitar for is it Tom Morello or is that Muse? I think there's Muse and there's Rage Against the Machine. Those two guitar players are very different. They treat the guitar very, very differently. The guy from Rage really sort of popularized the kill switch and sort of bringing that sort of dynamic element into playing. Innovators. I mean, even people like U2's The Edge, were what they lacked in style and technique. They had a sort of innovator, pioneer approach to the guitar that then influenced a lot of people in the guitar. One of my very favorites is a guy named Vinnie Riley who played for a band called Durruti Column. Go look him up. Go to YouTube and punch in Durruti Column and listen to some of his pieces. They're amazing. They were done in the early 80s and he was using reverb. He just had a simple Strat and he was using reverb and coming up with rhythmic patterns way before a lot of the other guitar players that I've just cited. He was a real pioneer, and for some reason, people don't know about him, and I think he's just an absolutely brilliant guitar player. I love Durruti Column's music, and I listen to it quite a lot. But there are a lot of people like that in and around different genres of music. There are, when people make their best guitar list, they hardly ever talk about the great prog guitar players. Your Hackett's and the guys that played in bands like all the krautrock guitar players in bands like Can. I mean, some of those players were amazing. I don't know all the names offhand, but some of them were amazing guitar players, and for some reason they don't get mentioned. The guys in the Canterbury scene, like Camel, the early jazz rock scene, those players were just absolutely spellbinding. And then of course your great jazz players, Christian, Hall. Gosh, I can't even think of most of them at the moment, but there are so many great guitar players in the jazz world, Metheny, who have very, very different sound and approaches. Like you take a Jim Hall, the way he attacks the guitar with such a soft touch, it's like a Bill Evans playing the piano, as opposed to a Thelonious Monk who's so angular and hits the keys so starkly. You got those styles also in the guitar world of jazz as well. Amazing variance between the different players. Wes Montgomery, of course, is known as the absolute guru of jazz guitar, but his style, playing with his thumb and first finger a lot, is very different from the very articulate using all the fingers that some of the other players do. And there are tons of them. I mean, you can get into the electric jazz of the 70s with Weather Prophet and John McLaughlin and all those guys, and they're another amazing group of guitarists as well. So, I could go on. I could do this video for hours and pull out names out of my head, but basically, I love the guitar and I love all string instruments. And every time I pick up a guitar, what I think of in my mind is, what sounds will this guitar make? I don't think to myself, how can I impress someone with my music theory knowledge, or how fast I can play a pentatonic scale or a harmonic minor scale or an arpeggio. What I think of is, what tones can I get? What sonic palette does this guitar have? What can it do? And that involves both hands. But a lot of guitar players think that everything is in the fingering hand, but the very best guitar players, and this goes to the classical players from Segovia to Parkening to Bream and John Williams, and the slew of guitar players now that have come after them, know that this hand is just as important. This hand is just as responsible for creating tone, for creating rhythm, for creating dynamism, for creating attack and decay of notes. And the very best rock players have picked that up from the jazz, classical, and flamenco players, to use both hands. Even if you're using a pick, You know, you can get variance in the way that you play a guitar. You can get a lot of different sounds out of the guitar. And then, of course, you get to these guitar players who just seem to be able to do it all. You know, there's a number of them that are just truly brilliant guitar players that seem to be able to operate in many different styles because they sleep with the thing. They live with it. They play it all the time. They never stop playing. They're always thinking about it. They can't walk past one without picking it up and trying out new things. And those are the guitar players that interest me. It's the ones that, for whom it's a holistic passion. It's you know, sort of a physical activity that goes beyond the physical dimensions. You know, that you develop almost a spiritual association to. These things are magic. They truly are magic. And the people that learn to appreciate that and have that relationship with their instruments, I think are the ones that become the most interesting players, the least mechanical, the least technically proficient, but the most sonically interesting players. So there's my take on guitar players. Leave me your comments on who impresses you, who inspires you. I chase down a lot of people's recommendations and go listening, so feel free to do that. All right, folks. Nice to talk about music for a change. See you next time.